BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, this is the Scottish Football Podcast and I'm Amy Canavan. It's Wednesday the 11th of September and here's what's on the agenda today.
Arne Engels is exactly the kind of profile of player that we've been crying out for. We sold Matt O'Reilly, who's going to be so hard to replace, but this is the type of signing that I think Celtic need to start making more of.
Price tag pressure. How will Arne Engels cope with being Celtic's record signing? Also,
drops Tavernier's way, shoots and scores! James Tavernier! And how often has he been the man for this club?
He's a club captain and the record goal-scoring defender in British football, but why does James Tavernier continue to be linked with a move away from Rangers? And
St Johnstone 0, Celtic 0. Delivery comes in and right to the 6-yard box, it's bobbling about, and then it's in, it's going to be forced in and into the back of the net. St Johnstone have scored!
Why are St Johnstone cutting tickets for Old Firm away fans?
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Joining me to discuss all that and everything in between, former Rangers Carlisle and Falkirk striker Rory and Scottish football correspondent for The Times, Michael Grant. On a miserable morning, we're going to give the guys an icebreaker into the day, a quick quiz question for you. We're going to be speaking about Arne Engels and the record fee that Celtic reportedly paid for him. But shortly, who are the top 5 players to move to Scottish football clubs for the highest fees? Don't answer just yet. I'll give you a minute to think and then come back to you. Michael Grant's got this in the bag, and to give you guys a wee chance, the listeners as well. Lots to discuss with Rory and Michael, but before all that, let's batter through the latest Scottish football headlines. Celtic's new Belgian midfielder Arne Engels says he doesn't feel any extra pressure to perform because he's the club's record signing. Scotland men's under-21s beat Malta 5-0 away from home last night. Lennon Miller scored 1 and assisted 2 on his competitive debut for the side. Elsewhere in international football, Rangers star Vaclav Černý and Nedim Bajrami starred for the Czech Republic and Albania respectively, while Aberdeen's Topi Keskinen was subject to criticism from Roy Keane for his performance for Finland against England last night. In a fans Q&A, Rangers manager Philippe Clement told supporters that he hates that the other side of the town are ahead right now, but insisted that his team can still win the league. And St Johnstone have announced they'll reduce the away ticket allocation for Rangers and Celtic fans at McDiarmid Park moving forward. Right then, let's start with Arne Engels after moving to Celtic for a reported club record fee of £11 million on the final day of the transfer window. He's told the media that he's not fazed by his price tags. Guys, I threw that question to you. Have you any thoughts, Rory?
That was very, very naughty of you, Amy. This is recorded at 6:30 in the morning. So trying to think. The first one that popped into my head was Tore Andre Flo.
Correct.
Yeah. So, Michael, your turn.
You're right, Rory. I'm struggling to think of 5 players that have been in Scottish football at all, let alone the most at this time in the morning. I'll give you odds on Edward.
Yeah, back to you, Rory. That's a good start, guys.
Yeah, not too bad. I think I may be struggling now.
Another one this window, Rory, at Celtic. Striker like yourself.
Oh, well. It certainly sounds like they paid more than anyone ever did for me. That's
Republic of Ireland International.
Oh, Adamida, of course. Sorry.
Correct. We'll go back to you, Michael.
But you know what? I would have forgotten about Adamida, which is ridiculous given that they just signed him a couple of weeks ago. I think Celtic signed 2 or 3 for about $6 million back in the O'Neill era. So one of them must be in the top 5. I'll say Sutton.
Nope, not as far back as another Celtic player is in there, but not as far back as Chris Sutton. Chris Sutton liked to sometimes be deployed as a defender. It is a Celtic defender that we're looking for.
A Celtic defender of recent times.
I think I do know now, man.
Fairly recent times, yeah. He's no longer with us. He's not dead, but he's no longer in Scottish football. This podcast and my presenter might be dead, but...
Is it Julian?
It is Christopher Julian. And to round it off, alongside him on the £7 million price tag-ish, a Rangers winger who is also no longer at the club.
Ryan Kent.
Yes, Ryan Kent, fantastic. With that though, let's get to talking about Engels and the price tag that these guys came with. How much pressure does come with that sort of price tag when it's Scottish football, Michael? I know if you talk on the wider sense, we're talking real pennies here, but for these guys, I know Arne Engels is saying that it doesn't really faze him, but there ought to be a bit of pressure that comes with it naturally.
Yeah, there'll be a bit of pressure that comes with it. I think Rory will probably, hopefully, back me up on this, but I think clubs are better, the big clubs are better these days at taking care of players. I think there's more of a support structure around players, especially maybe overseas players coming into a club. So they will have made him aware that he is the most expensive player they've ever signed. But I think they'll be careful not to kind of weigh him down with that. I think that being a club record is not the same as being the country's record signing. I remember when Flo signed for Rangers, there was a big deal about how much they paid for him, because that was quite a lot more money than any club had played for anybody in Scotland. So, and he didn't get off to a good start. I think quite quickly they were getting on his back a little bit for Old Firm performances. I've always thought that Tory Andy Flo's stats in Scotland are pretty strong. I looked at it again this morning: 38 goals and 72 appearances. I mean, that's good going, But he had this perception that he didn't score enough in the big games, so he was kind of seen as a flop, I guess. And the fee was the thing that we talked about with Tory Andrew Flo. It was about 12 million, I think, 12 million pounds. So, and I think anything that since then, obviously, there's not been a record signing in Scotland apart from the club guys. And I think Engels will do okay. I don't think he'll get weighed down by that. It's not a world record, it's not a national record. It's a nice thing for Celtic to be able to boast that they've spent this much money, made a record signing, but I think he'll be okay on that front.
Do you agree, Rory?
Yes, I do. I think there's enough support networks at clubs now to, there's all sorts of departments, especially the bigger clubs. You get your sports scientists, psychologists, you've got absolutely everything, but away from all of that, I think he just looks like a very good player, and the advantage he's got is he's coming into a very well-oiled machine, and if he maybe is at the start, having a little bit of trouble, they've got more than enough quality there to be able to spell him in and out, to bed him in, and for things to take a little bit of time. But in the recent past, if you look at some Celtic signings, they've been unbelievable. You'd really need to go back to the likes of Barkas and Albin Ayeti, who didn't play particularly well, and when that happens, their price tag always comes along with their name. So I actually feel in a roundabout way the club will feel a little bit more pressure that Engels does well, because of the money they have spent, and all the things that come along with a player of that price tag not performing well. And again, it's in the club's best interest to get the best out of him. Of course it is, but I just think the fact he's coming into a positive environment, a winning environment, a healthy squad, a competitive midfield, and it kind of looks to me like, in my opinion, that McCowan may be there to begin with. He may break his way in to maybe play the domestic stuff after the Champions League stuff, and Engels will potentially play in the Champions League, and it's Luke McCowan's job to maybe try and get in. Now, we don't know that yet, it's just my opinion, but I think Engels and McCowan look like astute signings, and I do agree with Michael. I just think he's a good enough player, and he's in a good enough environment that I don't think the price tag will affect him.
They don't need him to carry the team, do they,
no.
Rory? It's not like he's a striker coming into a team that isn't scoring, and it's all about his numbers. As you say, they've got Hatate, Bernardo, McGregor as a midfield that functions, so they can ease him in and out. If he doesn't catch fire immediately, they can ease him in and out. He's not got that burden on him as such. I think he'll be fine. And
behind confidence, just made his Belgium debut, 20 years old. So yeah, I think it's a coup for Scottish football as well. He's playing in the Bundesliga. He's 20 years old. He's just made his first start for Belgium. First appearance for Belgium. There would have been clubs highly interested in him. So it's good for Scottish football that they've been able to go out there and not only pay the money, but he seemed very, very keen on coming.
He, along with Luke McCowan, two players that spoke to the media in the last few days as well, Michael. He spoke yesterday about his move from Belgium to Germany at a very young age. He said that helped him grow up quickly. Is that what gives you the sort of liking to the cut of his jib?
Yeah, I wasn't at the press conference, but I think he's multilingual as well, which is pretty impressive. And not only is it impressive, but it'll help him. You know, we also spoke to the young fullback they've signed from Barcelona on loan, Alex Vai, a few days ago, and he again spoke very good English. And you just think that it does matter. You know, it does help them settle into Scotland, or it should help them settle into Scotland. So, you know, I think probably clubs to some degree are looking at this as well. You know, you don't just need to be a good player. If you're an impressive individual, it helps. If you look like you're strong enough mentally to come into a dressing room and immediately settle and not be overawed and just be able to be clear-headed about your football and play your best. I think these factors are taken into account when clubs are spending big money like that.
Plenty more to see from Arne Engels. While he has moved in, one player who continues to be linked with a transfer away from Glasgow is Rangers captain James Tavernier. With the transfer window still open in a number of countries, including Turkey, he is reportedly still the subject of interest from a number of clubs. When isn't he, Michael? He is forever linked with a move away, has been all throughout the summer. Why does the speculation still persist?
Yeah, it's a strange one around Tavernier, isn't it? I mean, I think there's probably a widespread feeling that the time has come for him to move on, you know, in a general sense, rather than just, you know, the timing of the window. You know, he isn't the force that he's been for Rangers. I mean, this season I've seen him 2 or 3 times, and he's just not looked the same figure athletically. You know, he's not offering the same threat. He hasn't scored yet, which by his standards is pretty slow off the mark. You know, but he's also got some fans on his back, hasn't he? You know, there's no question about it. You saw the scenes outside Ibrox after the Old Firm game when they went back to Ibrox, and a guy was giving him abuse, you know, and he is kind of the figurehead. It kind of directs towards him, I think, doesn't it, in terms of the players, because he's the guy that's been there the longest. He's the captain. He's synonymous with so many defeats and disappointments. I mean, listen, he's had his moments. He's had a pretty great career. There's a debate about whether he should be in the club's Hall of Fame or not. He is. You know, he's won all the trophies. His numbers are just absurd, really, for a player in his position. He's contributed hugely in that sense. But we all know he's also had his flaws. He's the guy that's the scapegoat after nearly every Old Firm game, it seems. It seems to be the same thing. He gets rinsed by Maeda. He gets blamed for goals that are conceded. This all flares up around a derby. And then he'll probably, you know, he might play okay again until the next one, and then it kind of happens again. So I was surprised he didn't go out. They got rid of a lot of the kind of old guard, didn't they, over the summer? He's the last man standing. There are still windows that are open for him to go to, specifically Turkey. But having said all that, I don't think it really suits Rangers to sell him right now, because they can't buy anybody. They could buy a free agent, they could sign a free agent, but they couldn't get another right back in until January. So I don't think it makes any sense for Tavernier to move around. He might think that he wants to get out, but I'm not sure. But I think hopefully that gives you my understanding of the kind of context of why this keeps coming up around him.
It does keep coming up, Rory. I think Michael makes a decent point there, among others, that Rangers' hands are sort of tied now, aren't they? Because they, you know, no matter who you bring, if it's a free agent, the likelihood of them being of anywhere of this sort of same standard as James Tavernier, despite his flaws that are very well documented, he is still a very consistent servant for Rangers.
I don't think he's been particularly consistent this season, and that's a worry. I don't think his body language looks the same as it has done in previous years, even in defeat. You know, and they've had plenty against Celtic. He just strikes you as a different character. I think, you know, in this day and age, he's continuing to be linked away. For me, that's coming from his camp, his agent, whoever it may be, trying to drum up interest. Some of the interest may not even be there. Agents are good at that these days, and I think they would. You know, everything strikes to me that he would like to move on. And I've said for a while now that, look, having your right back score so many goals is a bonus. It shouldn't be a necessity in any team that your right back scores goals. You shouldn't be reliant on him to score goals. It should be a bonus if he's scoring goals. Now, I understand he's almost hitting strikers figures some seasons in terms of the 20s, but again, that for me takes responsibility away from the players that should be doing it. That should be on top of, Rangers midfielders, Diamandi, etc., getting 8-9 goals a season. You look at Hatate, you look at O'Reilly, but James Tavernier, and it's credit to him, has consistently been a great source of goals for Rangers. I just don't think it's good if you're consistently reliant on your right back to score goals. And he's not been contributing in that sense this season so far. He doesn't look happy. And sometimes you just need to accept that, maybe it is time. And for Rangers as a club, is it maybe better to move him on and say, do you know what, Sterling is quite, he is quite injury prone at times, but let's get him in at right back, see how we go, and we'll just need to fill in till January rather than having this constant speculation all the time. Every time there's a defeat about James Tavernier, because I just think from the club's perspective as well, I do understand they don't have a replacement. Obviously Sterling can play there, but I just don't think it's a healthy situation at the moment, especially after the scenes last week at Ibrox, that it just feels like it's come to a natural conclusion. And I just think that if Rangers were to hold on to him, they're risking that toxic energy persisting.
Another player who continues to be linked away with a move from Ibrox, slightly different circumstances, and a player who perhaps didn't lighten the load of James Tavernier's goal-scoring prowess as much as he should have during his time in the team. Ianis Hagi, he's played well for Romania again this week in their Nations League encounter with Lithuania. He's vowed to fight for his place again. Michael, are you surprised that Rangers seem to still kind of be so keen to get rid of him?
Yeah, well, I mean, the understanding, I think, is that if he plays one more first-team appearance, he kind of clicks into another pay band. He's on 99 appearances. I mean, Hagi has had his moments. He's been around Rangers for quite a while now, 3.5 seasons, I think, and he's had his moments when he's contributed quite well, and also a lot of spells when he's been kind of underwhelming. I don't think he's the answer to the issues they have. Far more importantly, I don't think Philippe Clement thinks he's the answer to the problems they have. I mean, it's just a kind of another poorly handled kind of issue by the club, isn't it? He's still around. They haven't been able to move him on. You think, as you say, he's just done well for Romania, and not for the first time. I mean, the guy's got profile. And again, it ties into this kind of thing that you feel that Rangers just don't seem to be able to get value for players that they're trying to move on. In fact, they can't move them on at all. And then so he's going to kind of loiter around the club. We don't expect him to play in the first team again. I mean, as you said about Tavernier, some windows are still open, so maybe he'll go out, but it doesn't look like that. So it looks like the guy's just going to be kicking around, training, playing in the B team, picking up a decent salary and not contributing. And then we'll have this debate all over again in January, and we'll probably have it about Tavernier as well,
Look forward to booking you guys in for that podcast as well then, and we can just repeat all of this, Rory. But this is again the sort of player and scenario that you're alluding to with this toxic scenario, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think the fact he came out publicly and said that he wanted to stay and fight, he also hinted at the fact that these things could be resolved. His wages jump up X amount. He's probably putting it out there that he may be willing to compromise. I don't like these clauses in contracts, which, I've seen it a few times where players play X amount of games, they get a wage rise, and then one game away, they're stuck. Now, I do think from Rangers' point of view, they're probably thinking once they sign them, if a player's going to make 100 appearances for a club, they're going to be worth, that extra investment at that point. I do agree with Michael. I think he would improve Rangers' squad at the moment. I'm not sure he would come in and be an automatic pick ahead of Diamandi or Tom Lawrence or whoever else it may be. I just don't think he's done enough in his time at Ibrox and players often, as they say, become better players when they're injured. Fans tend to romanticise about how good players are, especially when their current team's going through a bit of a difficult situation. But the way Rangers have handled so much over the last few years has been shambolic, to be honest. If you look at players at the peak of their potential transfer fees, Morelos over the year, few years ago, Ryan Kent. These players moved on for nothing. Then you've got Hagi there. I mean, there's so much mismanagement and of players and business. It's quite incredible, and it's highlighted even more, and it comes into much sharper focus when your closest rivals across the city, Celtic, are so good at it. So it just baffles me how people can't come out and and be a little bit more transparent about the situation, and have a conversation with Hagi and the players of your club. And that's one thing that I always felt was lacking in football, is just basic human communication. Now, we don't know what's went on behind the scenes, but it just seems to me like a situation where if Hagi's prepared to come and go, maybe worth trying to resolve that again, not necessarily because you think Hagi's going to be the best player in the building, because it takes that negative feeling and view and overall picture away from the club, and it does have a pretty toxic environment and feel to it at the moment, with so many lingering issues which have nothing to do with the playing field, added to the fact that they haven't been great on the playing field.
St Johnstone have become the latest Scottish Premiership club to lower the number of away tickets for Rangers and Celtic fans. In an open letter to their supporters, the club's American owner Adam Webb outlined the plan to reduce the allocation, in a move that follows similar decisions taken by Kilmarnock, Hearts, Hibs and St Mirren in recent years. Michael, can you offer some light on this sort of scenario? What do you make of this move?
This is an issue that we kick around quite often as well, isn't it? Aberdeen are another team that have done it with the old firm allocations. I can see both sides of it, because if you're if you're Rangers or Celtic, or a supporter of Rangers or Celtic, you cannot see the sense in being denied access to watch your team if seats are sitting empty, And I think they also say, well, other clubs plead poverty in this league, and then they cut their nose off to spite their face by not selling us the allocations that we could fill out. But on the other hand, a club like St Johnstone has an obligation to its own supporters, and they, like all clubs, they really resent an invasion of 4,000-5,000 Rangers and Celtic fans completely occupying their stadium. And what you see, and you've seen this for a number of seasons, is that the home support actually drops for Rangers and Celtic visits. Historically, that wasn't the case. That was a big game in the season. Clubs their support would turn up for it. What you don't see that so much now. You see a dampening down of the home support. Because they mostly think they're gonna lose. So, who wants to see, it's not competitive a lot of the times. But secondly, people don't want to see, or don't want to see their kids with this invasion of fans, and they don't like the singing and so on. And a club does have an obligation to its own supporters to satisfy them and to make them feel like they are the most important people at the club, so moving season ticket holders to increase a bigger away, to accommodate a bigger away allocation, it's problematic for clubs. So it's not a straightforward issue, And I can see it both sides. If I'm not a Rangers or Celtic fan, if I was, I would understand the frustration of not being able to go and watch my team when you see big empty sections in the home grounds. I don't think Adam Webb's statement, I don't think it changes too much from my understanding of the allocations at Perth. I think it's more of a kind of continuation of what they've had. But you remember the game in the Scottish Cup when Rangers went to Perth, and I think they had 3 sides, didn't they? And it was a Rangers home game on tour kind of thing, wasn't it? And the St Johnstone fans were so scunnered that they boycotted the thing, and I think it was only a few hundred Saints fans went. So a club's mindful of that. And sorry, I'm rambling on here, but St Johnstone is one of the grounds where the home support can get swamped by Rangers and Celtic fans visiting. It doesn't happen in Edinburgh or Aberdeen. St Mirren now have kind of put them in kind of one stand, but Saints and 1 or 2 other grounds can still feel completely overwhelmed. And like Livingston was one as well last season.
It's that complete overpowering feeling. I think you hit the nail on the head there, that sort of home game on tour, Rory. And that's the point that you want to make, isn't it? That it's about St Johnstone just prioritising their own support and making sure that their match day experience is of the highest level, no matter who's in town.
Yeah, listen, I think I would just be repeating what Michael was covered at that point. The only aspect he didn't cover, which I would comment on, is the player's perspective. Now, from the player's perspective, outwardly, if they're ever asked about it, they would probably be quite diplomatic about it all. But regardless of, I played for Dundee, and luckily enough, when we were in the Premier League and, Rangers or Celtic came to town, we did have, big enough support, and then Rangers or Celtic fans filled one of the end stands and made a great noise. But if I was a St Johnstone player, don't get me wrong, if it was going to push my own fans away, then that's maybe slightly different. But, if we were going to get similar home crowd and Rangers and Celtic took up the rest of the seats, Aberdeen, Hibs, Hearts, whoever it may be, for a better atmosphere, as a player, that's what you would want. You want to play in good atmospheres. You don't want big, sparse parts of the stadium sitting empty. You want a good atmosphere. You want that feel in the stadium. Now, I understand from from a fan's perspective, there's so many of Rangers and Celtic fans that it may feel like an away fixture, but at the end of the day, you're still playing at home. You've still got the advantages of playing at home. You just don't have as many fans on your side as you normally do. And I just think from a player's perspective, you always want atmosphere. You always want as many fans in the stadium as you can, whether they're for you or against you. This is why Rangers and Celtic players will always come out and say that they want away fans at the Old Firm derbies, because it's just different. It's got that extra added spice to it. And I just think as a player, you want to play in front of as many fans as you can, regardless of if they're your supporters or not.
That's all we've got time for today, though. My many thanks go to Michael and Rory, and thank you for listening. Remember, we are here with the Scottish Football Podcast every day, so to be alerted when new episodes are out, subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on in your phone. For now, though, bye-bye.
This is the shocking moment English football has been dreading.
My name is Moses Swabu, and I used to be a professional footballer, but then I got in deep with organised crime and became a match fixer operating in the English League.
A match-fixing investigator has highlighted 2 matches he says appear to have suspicious betting patterns.
How honest are you going to be with me?
This is 100%. Join me for Sports Strangest Crimes presents Confessions of a Match Fixer. Listen on BBC Sounds.